Today, we review a book that has one of the highest ratings on Goodreads that I've ever seen. It's higher than Catcher in the Rye and To Kill a Mockingbird and a host of others. So does that mean you should rush out and buy a copy of J.D. Robb's Brotherhood in Death? Let this old man save you some money. One of the worst kept secrets in all of publishing is that J.D. Robb is really just the pen name for Nora Roberts. J.D. Robb's In Death series is one of the longest running mystery series there is, with over 50-some books at this point. And so I decided it's high time I get in on that action. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. And I'm going to tell you all the reasons why I was wrong so you don't have to make the same mistakes I did. First, a quick sample of Brotherhood in Death. She rubbed at the back of her neck because, damn it, she could see some of it. Some of her neck? Eve Dallas is the long-running protagonist of the In Death series. She's a homicide detective in a futuristic New York. There's also a cast of characters and friends who help her solve these murders and mysteries. Eve is rather likable. She's grouchy and blunt, and she says mean things to mean people, and that kind of gives you a sense of justice. That's the end of all my positives about this book. I can't do this review justice without diving into some spoilers. I just can't. It wouldn't be fair. So if the spoilers are going to bother you, turn the video off now, because we're about to dive into them. Let's pause for another reading from Brotherhood in Death. They got off on 18 to Much Shinier and worked their way down to Lauren Canford's office. To Much Shinier? Dune, like the best science fiction book of all time? This book's rated higher than Dune. The murder/mystery of this book starts when one of Eve's close friends has a relative who was assaulted and then goes missing, and no one can seem to find him. He turns up murdered a few days later. The victim in this case is a well-known politician who is well-known in part for his promiscuous behavior. And so Eve and her crew decide to form a list of suspects based on his most recent mistresses. And this is fine, not bad police work. However, while interviewing these suspects, Eve is very quick to just isolate one or two of them as main suspects because she didn't like the way they answered the question. And you know what makes it worse? She's not wrong. The suspects are, in fact, the perpetrators of the crime. And we find that out in like the first third of the book. There's not another twist or turn to be found in the book. She just spends the rest of the book complaining about what these suspects did and trying to stop them from doing more crimes. And let's get back to what the crimes are. And yet another reading from Brotherhood in Death. Eve stepped up to reception, and the man in his 20s with a bold blue tie precisely knotted at the base of his really long neck. Period. That was it. That was the sentence. That's all. You're telling me this is rated higher than The Great Gatsby. So let's talk about these crimes for a second. I have to dance around this a little bit because I don't want this video to get pulled down. So let's just say this. The victim of the original crime, the politician, he and his friends have a long and storied history of behaving very badly towards women. Yeah, that's what they did. A lot of bad stuff. And they've done it for years and they've never been caught. Until now. And now, he and his group are starting to be picked off one by one and murdered in horrendous ways. You know what? I don't really feel that bad for him. And so, I spent a lot of this book trying to figure out who I was rooting for. Eve spends a lot of time trying to prevent these suspects from committing any more murders, and yet I'm kind of like, well, maybe they can get away with it. So, we hear a lot of exposition about why Eve, a victim herself of this same horrendous crime, why she wants to stop the suspects from continuing their murder spree. And to be frank, the book becomes kind of boring. A final reading from Brotherhood in Death. Eve dug into her pockets for enough to cover it. Quote, "Get me a tube of Pepsi and whatever you want. Official, but pleasant." End quote. Official, but pleasant? Is that the Pepsi? It's rated higher than 1984. Yes, 1984. George Orwell's earth-shattering 1984 that changed the way we look at everything. Now, maybe I'm really just irritated because I feel like the book was filled with stuff that didn't make sense. See, some of her rubbed at her neck. And I'm not just talking about the plot. The plot made sense. It was just kind of boring. I spent most of the time on the sideline watching Eve complain about stuff. I'm talking about things like sentences not even being sentences. I'm talking about dialogue that doesn't make sense between two characters. I'm talking about scenes where we have a husband and wife with the same last name, Mira, both participating in a conversation and quotes being attributed to Mira. I don't know if it's Mr. Mira, Miss Mira. Miss Mira goes by Charlie, Charlotte, and Mira. So who's saying these things? I don't know. And frankly, I stopped caring. At first, I thought this was a problem with me not being a longtime reader of this series. But as I went on, I realized this is possibly the most horrendously edited book I've ever read. Look, there's no way around it. This book is terrible. It's awful. First, we have a story that's pretty boring, to be frank. Yeah, there's murders happening, but we don't really care about the victims. In fact, no one is going to be sad to see these victims die. The suspects are never really characterized to be any kind of worthy adversaries of Eve herself, so we know what's going to happen in the end. It's really, really, really bad. If I could go lower than 1 out of 5 stars, I would, but that's the lowest I can go. This book is awful, and my first foray into the in-depth series is my last. I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please consider giving it a like and hitting that subscribe button. Also, you can check out the link below to see my written review of this book on Goodreads. Consider following me there so you can see what books I'm reading and what books I'll be reviewing soon. Also, with this being one of the highest selling series of all time, perhaps I got it wrong. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Maybe I'm way off base. Spoiler, I'm not. But I'd love to hear your opinion. That's all we have. Take care. Have a great day.